Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano. All day today, I think I'm going to call myself Phyllis Italiano, and most people can't even spell Phyllis. Sometimes I think I can't either. My guest today is an old friend, which is why I can start with a little levity. Bridget Fleming, who is presently a councilwoman in Southampton.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And a lawyer in Sag Harbor.
That's right, too, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So we want to know something about you because you now are a candidate for county legislator on the Democratic line.
That's right, on the Democratic line and the Working Families line.
Well, that's why I was going to say, and I would assume the Working Family.
Right. And
Okay.
I expect I'll be on at least another couple lines, so we'll see as that process unfolds in the next month or so.
Right.
But you'll definitely find me on those two lines, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us something about you.
Oh, something about me. Well, I live in Noyac. I have a son in the Sag Harbor Public Schools. My husband is a carpenter by trade and does building. And my husband and I have been in Sag Harbor in Noyac since 2001. So almost 15 years now.
And where do you come from? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
So I was raised outside of Washington, D.C.
Where do you mean outside of Washington?
In Alexandria, Virginia.
I know it well. I'm a graduate of American University and started my teaching in Montgomery County, Maryland.
So my high school was the Washington Academy of Ballet. I went to a ballet academy that fed into the Washington Ballet Company, which is not far from American University. You go past the cathedral and then it's up almost to the Chevy Chase Circle. Yeah. So that's where I started, but then I moved to New York as a dancer. I danced with Washington Ballet Company for a few years, and then I moved to New York City and lived there for quite some time. I ended up going to law school. I went to Hunter College in New York City, and then I went to law school at the University of Virginia. They offered me a very nice scholarship, and so I ended up going back to Virginia for law school. And then
UVA has a very good law school, as a matter of fact.
Yes, a great law. It was really a wonderful experience, and it really set me up for, sort of at a top tier to enter the legal profession, which was great. But then I ran into Robert Morgenthau, who was then the legendary district attorney in New York County, on a train, an Amtrak train. When I come on your show, I always tell hokey stories. I hope you don't mind. But
No. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping that other people will know who he is, Morgenthau, because he was very famous.
Oh yeah, he was an incredible boss. I mean, the end of the story is I met him on a train, and then we talked for an hour or more, and I didn't know who he was, and I was in my second year of law school and just talked about the Bill of Rights, James Madison, cameras in the courtroom. I knew it all, and he let me talk. And then at the end of the conversation, he invited me to come work for the office. And he actually wrote his name and phone number. Robert Morgenthau wrote his name and phone number on my Amtrak ticket stub, which I stupidly didn't save, and invited me to come work for the office. So I did that. I worked there that summer, and then I was hired after I graduated from law school, and I was an assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office for 10 years, just shy of 10 years.
Wow.
I was in a general trial bureau, did general street crime, and then I was in the sex crimes prosecution unit under Linda Fairstein. And then I ran a unit that prosecuted fraud in public programs, in Medicaid, public housing, and welfare.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a terrific record you have there.
It was a really incredible opportunity. Some of the greatest trial lawyers in the country are there. And Mr. Morgenthau was just a remarkable boss because he was so established. He's unquestionably respected in every corner of the legal profession.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yes.
So he used to say, when I was a unit chief, it was in a fairly high-profile area, the fraud in public programs. So I had regular interaction with him in terms of deciding. We would do large-scale investigations, and so we would have to decide where we would put resources, what other government agencies we would work with, that sort of thing. And so Mr. Morgenthau was always just crystal clear. Is there a crime? Can we prove it? Then we do something about it. The worst thing that could happen is if you pursue someone who isn't guilty, right? And so those were the things. It was just a question is it the right thing to do? And if it was, then we went forward and did it and put the resources of the organization behind it and did what we could to ensure the public safety and to ensure the integrity of these programs was really our point. And so it was a great place for a young lawyer to start because I sort of understood from the beginning that the analysis you do is, can I make the community better by taking these steps? Can I ensure the integrity of the programs? Can I make sure that that people are helped and not hurt by what I do? And if I can, then that's how you should be a government actor. And so it was a great, great beginning for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure working with somebody with that kind of high moral principles must have been also very illuminating to you.
Yeah, it did. It did sort of fit very well in the way I was raised, in a very sort of community-minded, spiritual, religious family. So it fit very well for me, and I think that may have been why Mr. Morgenthau and I saw eye to eye. You know, he saw in me what he then promoted throughout the office. There are 500 lawyers in that office. It's a big place.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's advance the story of Bridget Fleming.
Okay.
And the Bridget Fleming story is obviously you have to meet this man.
Right. Who, my husband?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. So we met at a yoga studio, actually, in the city. And then we decided we wanted to leave the city. We wanted to raise a family, and the city no longer suited the way we were comfortable living. So my husband said that he knew this fabulous town called Sag Harbor, and I was not.
Boy, was he right.
It's paradise.
It is.
I think I have told you in the past that when he brought me out to show me, and that afternoon we went into the Alan Schneider real estate office on Main Street in Sag Harbor and asked them to start looking for something that we could afford. And within a couple of weeks, we were in contract to buy a house and never looked back.
Yes.
Yeah. So we
I know
live in
the
Noyak.
feeling.
Yeah.
I know. I came out here on a February break when I was a teacher. Actually, I was in a way, it was quite a serendipitous pursuit of mine because I came right after 9/11 in 2001. I came in February of 2002 when the prices were low.
Oh, interesting.
So I was able to, on my teacher's salary, although I did have a little help from my family, but I was able to find a house and I live in Springs, which I think is heaven on earth, right near my bay. The bay is my pool, and I really felt like this was the community because there were kids playing on my street, and as an elementary school teacher, I like that stuff. Yeah. I like to see kids on the street.
Yeah.
So
I live in Noyak in a sort of regular kind of people neighborhood, and it's the same way. And the bay is everywhere. I think that's what you find throughout the East End. There are all these little places where ordinary local folks have carved out, these beautiful lives for ourselves and just live a very high quality of life because of the natural resources.
So now you decide after a while, after you establish yourself as a lawyer here, to run for the board of Southampton.
Well, what happened actually is as soon as we got out here, I got pregnant. Actually, right before we moved in, I discovered that I was pregnant. And And we ended up having only the one son, but I decided to stay home with him. I was working for a lawyer in Riverhead, and he was Harvey Arnoff is his name, and he was very generous in that after I took a break with the baby, he allowed me to bring the baby to the office with me. So I had a crib, and I had one of those little entertainment units. He lay on the floor and did that. And so for 3 months, I worked as a lawyer with the baby with me. And then after he got big enough to start moving around, it wasn't going to work out. And so I ended up taking off for 6 years. And I stayed home with Jay, my son, who's now 12. And then as soon as he was eligible, as soon as he was old enough for full-time school, I went back to work. And that's when I
had the same experience. I stayed home with my 4 children. And when my last one went to first grade, I went back to school because you had to have a master's degree at that point to be able to teach.
Okay.
So I had to go back to school and get the master's degree and stuff, and then I began my career again.
Oh, that's great. I think we as women, we all have different trajectories because it's always challenging to try to balance the professional world with the personal world. And I think it's a great blessing to have the opportunity. I did it the other way. I had a legal career, and then I stopped and was a mom. I feel very blessed because I feel like I just made it under the wire, to have my son. And those times, especially when he was little, well, even now, it's just such a great blessing to be a mom. So I was...
When did you get to be a grandmom?
Oh, I know.
That's really even
greater. I started super late, so it'll be a while because Jay is only 12. But
so how did you get into politics?
Right, and so then as soon as Jay was ready for school, I opened the law practice, and I actually was meeting with a friend of mine, Betty Schlein, who's the former president of the National Organization of Women, who has a little lunch group of movers and shakers. My mother used to call them the ladies at lunch. And I started meeting with them. I met Judith Hope through Betty, and Judith and Betty both suggested that I run for office. Because of my interest in politics and my background. And then shortly after that, Anna Throneholst, who was then this town council person, was planning to run for supervisor. And she and I ran into each other, and she asked me if I would join her on the ticket and run for the town board. So that was not even a year after I had sort of emerged from full-time mom and yoga teacher and decided to pursue the law practice. And so I ran, and I didn't win. I had no name recognition. I had been serving on the NOYAC CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, for a time, but that was the only public service I had done out here. And so I ran and lost by a narrow margin, but I knew that there would be a special election. It looked as though Anna was going to be elected, and then her vacant council seat would have to be filled. So I ran and lost, and then immediately after, I was geared up to run for the special election to fill that vacancy. And so I was elected then. Since that time, I've been re-elected, and I've been on the town board now for 5 years.
And I know that you're very interested in not only the economic development, but also the balance between economics and environment, the two most important E's, I would say.
Absolutely.
Out here.
Well, the environment is really the engine. You add a third E. The environment is the engine of our economy. We depend on our natural resources not only for the enjoyment that they give us, but it's the basis of the bread and butter that everyone puts on our table.
You want to say that again? Because I'm not sure everybody understands that.
Yeah,
If you don't protect the environment, you ain't going to have anything left here.
Although I have to say, we're very fortunate in terms of our leaders. I'm running to fill a vacancy that'll occur when Jay Schneiderman leaves office. Jay's been in that office for 12 years, and I think everyone knows he's been a very responsible steward of the environment, works super hard for us on that score. I think the supervisors in all 3 of the towns that are in the district, East Hampton, Larry Cantwell, Southampton and Shelter Island, Jim Doherty, are all stewards of the environment as well. So that's one of the nice things about what I'm looking forward to should I be elected to this position. I already have relationships with these folks who know what it means to see, for instance, the fish kill or the red tide, to see our environment threatened as it is, the impaired water body in the Weesek Creek or the western Shinnecock Bay, out east, the threats to the coast, from the storms and erosion. All these things are very real to us because our marine economy, our fisheries, our shell fisheries, our resort economy are all based on the health and resiliency of our natural resources. And as long as all of us as partners understand that's the case, then we have an opportunity to do good things. And I should throw Al Krupski in there too, because Al is a farmer from the North Fork. He represents the 1st legislative district. I would represent the 2nd legislative district. And we would be the only 2 representatives of the East End. There are 18 legislators in the county. And from Riverhead to Orient and Mauritius, and Montauk, we only have the 2. So you really need folks who have good relationships, who have good track records, who know, I think my legal background is helpful too, who really know how to get things accomplished and have demonstrated that in the past in order to make sure that our interests are met. The county executive is about to spend $383 million that comes largely from post-Sandy money on nitrogen reduction in the waterways. Al, and I hope myself, have to be in there fighting for those dollars because most of them are already committed up west to sewers, at the Carmens River and the Forge River, which no doubt are all, impaired water bodies and need that attention. But,
here we need better septic systems, and we need to get Suffolk County to be able to give us the kind of septic system that does mitigate the nitrogen.
Absolutely.
And they have not moved on that like they should be moving on that,
well,
because sewers are not going to work for here.
That's right. I agree with you. The good news is that the Suffolk County Legislature just adopted 2 very important documents. One is a climate action plan, and that talks to coastal resiliency and the coastline and climate change and how that the importance of renewable energy, that sort of thing. But secondly, a comprehensive water resources management plan, and that includes the second priority in that comprehensive water resources plan is the development and the implementation of on-site wastewater treatment for residential. We don't want sewers out here. Sewers are not appropriate. No. There's isolated appropriate. I know they're looking at a
Montauk,
small system for downtown Montauk. But look, downtown Montauk is completely built out. That's a question of, already existing an economy that's based on wonderful businesses that are already there and need that kind of support. The rest of East Hampton and Southampton really do well are in much better shape without sewer systems, but desperately need better septic systems, and that's what we've got to pursue. And it is, I'm glad to see it. It is in there.
Yes.
The question is, do you have legislators representing the district who are slugging it out, who are willing to go in there and fight very hard for those dollars? And that's what we have to do.
Well, I think you really kind of started when you talked about that fish kill, which was like unbelievable. My son in New York City sent that to me in an email, and I looked and I thought, well, where did he get this from? China? I really could not believe. And not only was it immense, but it was also deep. There were many thousands of fish, right?
It Those little bunker fish.
And even in the last big rainstorm we had, there were like 67 beaches that were closed in Suffolk County. This is crazy.
So here's the thing. We have known for some time that nitrogen is out of balance in our surface waters. And the question is, what do we do with it? We've now, in the past, I'd say 5 years, we have now seen government at all levels focused on it in terms of data gathering, assessment, planning,
Correct.
that sort of thing. Now it's time to act, because we can't act quickly enough, because we have seriously impaired water bodies. Absolutely. And we'll kill the golden goose is what's going to happen. We cannot lose.
I think it's very important for everybody to realize that though you may be somebody who is either waiting a table or teaching a class or whatever you're doing in this area,
farming or fishing,
doesn't make any difference at all. I don't care if you're cutting a lawn. I don't care if you're painting a house. It all will depend upon keeping this area what it is.
Absolutely.
And I call it seeing around the corner. You have to maintain this area or you're going to lose it. And
I think we have gotten the attention of government actors at all levels. The question now is, how do we put our smarts to it? How do we put the funding to it and figure out a way? Because one of the problems with these septic systems, the individual on-site systems, is that they're very expensive. Our homeowners can't afford it, and some of the most important places to implement these are places where people are least able to
where the density is high, as in
small
Springs.
Lots, exactly, small lots right there on 3 Mile Harbor.
Yes.
Without the real financial ability. So there are things that are happening at a number of levels. As I said, the county executive is about to roll out this plan. In support of it, we have the comprehensive water plan, which includes these septic systems, or looking towards developing these septic systems. Town of Southampton is partnering with Stony Brook, SOMAS at Stony Brook, to create an incubator project so that the industry can be further developed. And the county is looking to implement pilot programs. They actually have 19 pilot systems in place now.
Yes.
They've approved 7 alternative treatment unit systems, but they're for larger. They go up to 30,000 gallons. So they're for larger systems. We need to figure out how, as a community, we are going to treat wastewater in residential properties that are not connected to a full sewer system. It doesn't mean we can't have cluster systems or affordable individual systems, but we need to find a place where we can start implementing those immediately.
And the other part, which sort of goes hand in hand with this, is also that the zoning. I mean, we talked a little bit before we started on this, what people are against increased development. Would you explain what that's all about?
Well, I think what you were interested in is the planned development districts,
yes.
Which that's in the town of Southampton. Some years ago, implemented or passed legislation that would allow for the town board to make, because the town board can pass zoning change regulations. The town board has the ability to implement multi-use developments, so that you would have a development that would have, say, residential and commercial all in one zoning designation. So it's sort of like an overlay zone that goes right on top of current zoning. And we've had a number of those that we're considering at the moment. 2 that we're looking at right now. One is for a grocery store on County Road 39, and one is for a very large golf course and high-end home development up in the hills in East Quogue. So both of those have some real controversy attached to them, and mostly around environmental issues. On the grocery store, it has to do with traffic. County Road 39 is a single east-west artery taking people from up west to East Hampton, to out east, as we call it. And so there are grave concerns about implementing or putting in place a development that's going to further burden the traffic situation there. And the other, in my view, has to do with water quality, because it's a very, very, very large parcel that is a watershed right into the Weesett Creek. Weesett Creek connects to the Shinnecock Bay and has been deemed an impaired water body. Already been closed once for red tide this season, and this is the earliest that I can remember, because usually it takes some time for the water to heat up before we see those red tides and the alga blooms that really impede shellfishing and the growth of shellfish populations. So those are huge, huge questions. The question is, can we increase nitrogen input in a water body that's already impaired? And so I think that's where your questions come in.
Also, I wanted to just quickly mention myself, whenever I travel below 27, because I won't go on County Road 39 myself. I'm smart enough to know to avoid it. Mm-hmm. And what I find is that I tried to count them at one point. And I think I mentioned this the last time we were talking. I tried to count the new houses, and they weren't just houses. They were, I think the Queen of England's going to come into one of them. Seriously, seriously. And you know what? I also found out that they do not have the up-to-date nitrogen mitigating septic systems. They just have regular septic systems.
Yeah, we need to
Shame
start
on
looking.
them.
We definitely have to start looking at, because those are folks who can afford to have
easily,
more easily afford than.
And I will say,
oh, are we done?
my dear, we are.
Too fast.
I know, always, always.
Always.
But we'll have you back again while you're running, and we'll talk more, because you're a lady who thinks like I do.
Yes, Phyllis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a pleasure.
Yes.
Goes so quickly.
I know.